So, good morning, everyone. Today, we are going to discuss a topic which, at first glance, may appear to be a distant international conflict, but in reality, it has very direct implications for India's economy, foreign policy, and even your daily life. The topic for today is Iran conflict and its impact on India. So, before we begin, I want you to think about something very simple. So, whenever fuel prices increase, inflation rises, or economic pressure builds, we often assume these are purely domestic issues. But in today's interconnected world, many of these developments are actually influenced by global events. The Iran conflict is one such example. It is not just a regional issue involving Iran, Israel, or United States of America. It is a complex geopolitical situation shaped by historical events, ideological differences, nuclear politics, and strategic geography. And because of India's deep integration with global energy market and trade system, this conflict directly affects us. So let me start with a very simple but powerful question. If tomorrow petrol prices shoot up, LPG becomes expensive, inflation rises, and economic pressure increases. So, what will you think? Most people will say this is a domestic issue. But as an UPSC aspirant, you must think differently. You must ask what is happening globally that is causing this. And one of the most important example of this connection is the Iran conflict. Now, before we jump into India directly, we need to build the foundation properly. Otherwise, India's role will look disconnected. So, we must go back to 1953. Iran had a democratic elected leader, Mossadegh. He nationalized oil. Now, think carefully. Oil is not just a commodity, it is power. Western countries, especially the UK, had strong control over Iranian oil. When Iran tried to take control, it challenged that power. So, what happened? A coup supported by external powers. Mossadegh was removed. Now, pause here and think like an Iranian citizen. You elected a leader and then foreign powers remove him. So, what kind of trust will you have in those countries? So, this is not just an event, this becomes a long term psychological memory. What it becomes? It becomes a long term psychological memory. And this memory is still shaping Iran's behavior today. Now, move to 1979, the Iranian Islamic Revolution. Iranian Islamic Revolution. The Shah is overthrown and Iran becomes an Islamic republic. But don't see this just as a political change. This is a transformation of identity. Iran now define itself in opposition to West and reject Israel's legitimacy. So this is not just foreign policy, it is ideology. Now when ideology enters international relations, conflicts become deeper and longer because now it is not just about interest, it is about beliefs. It is about beliefs. Then comes sanctions. Iran becomes economically isolated, its oil exports restricted. Now, what does Iran do? So it cannot fight a direct war with powerful countries. So it develops a proxy strategy. It builds influences through groups like Hezbollah and Houthis. This allows Iran to remain relevant without a direct confrontation. Now bring in the nuclear issue. This is the core of the problem. Iran says its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes. But nuclear technology is dual use. दो यूज होते हैं इसके. It can produce energy, but it can also produce weapons. So the worlds become suspicious. And to manage this, the P5 plus 1 group, P5 plus 1 group, USA, UK, France, Russia, China, and Germany negotiate with Iran. And this leads to the 2015 nuclear deal. Nuclear deal, JCPOA. Iran agrees to limit its enrichment, reduce centrifuges, and allow inspections. And in return, the sanctions were lifted. Now, who verifies this? The IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency. It inspects, monitors, and reports. This is crucial because without verification, no agreement can work. But then come 2018, the US withdraws from the deal, and this changed everything. Iran start increasing its enrichment again. Now it is close to nuclear threshold levels. Israel sees this as an existential threat. Israel sees this as an existential threat and begins preventive actions, and this leads to escalation. Now bring in geography. Iran is located near ईरान इज लोकेटेड नियर द स्ट्रेट ऑफ हॉर्मोज. ये स्ट्रेट ऑफ हॉर्मोज है, यहाँ पे देखो. अराउंड 20% ऑफ ग्लोबल ऑयल, around 20% of global oil passes through this narrow route. And if this route is disrupted, even slightly, oil prices rise globally. And because demand for oil is inelastic, even a small disruption can create a large impact. Now we come to India. And now I want you to focus deeply because this is where most answers either become average or excellent. So, India's connection with Iran is not new. Historically, India and Iran have had strong civilizational and cultural ties. Persian influence on Indian culture, language, and administration goes back century. But in modern geopolitics, the relationship is driven by three major factors. And what are those three major factors or pillars? These three pillars are energy, connectivity, and strategy. अब सबसे पहले देखते हैं हम लोग फर्स्ट एनर्जी. सो ईरान हैज बिकम वन ऑफ इंडियाज की ऑयल सप्लायर्स. Not just any supplier, but one that offered favorable terms, including deferred payments and discounts. And this was very useful for India's energy security. However, due to US sanctions, India had to reduce imports from Iran. This shows a limitation that India cannot act completely independent because global power structure still influence its choices. So historically we got cheap and reliable oil, but due to US, it limits our choices. Not limit, but influences also. Now, second comes to connectivity, and this is where the Chabahar port becomes extremely important. India has invested in Chabahar in Iran to gain access to Afghanistan and Central Asia. Now, why this is important? Because Pakistan blocks India's land access to these regions. So, Iran provides an alternative route. Now remember, this is not just a port, it is an strategic gateway. It is an strategic gateway not only to Afghanistan or Central Asia but to Europe also. So now think one level deeper. China is developing Gwadar port in Pakistan, and this is a part of its Belt and Road Initiative. So Chabahar is also indirectly a counter to China's influence in this region. And what is that region? Indian Ocean region. So one project connect India to Afghanistan, counter Pakistan, and balance China. This is what strategic depth. Strategic depth. That at one point you are connecting with Afghanistan, you are countering Pakistan and balancing China. Now third comes the strategic balancing. India maintain its relationship with multiple actors, with US, Israel, and Iran. And each of these relationship is important. US is important for technology and global influence. Israel is important for defense and intelligence cooperation. And Iran is important for energy and connectivity. Now the challenge is this: these three are not aligned with each other. So India has to balance carefully. It cannot fully support Iran because of US relations, and it cannot ignore Iran at same point of time because of its strategic importance. So what India follows, what we call it strategic autonomy. What we call it strategic autonomy. And remember, this is different from the word we learned before, that is security dilemma. Now, but understand this clearly, that strategic autonomy does not means neutrality. Strategic autonomy का मतलब नहीं है कि that you maintain neutrality. It means making decisions based on a national interest, not aligning permanently with any one bloc. International relations, if you have to understand it in one line, then you can learn it by one single saying. And that is that in international relations, no one is your permanent friend and no one is your permanent enemy. Now, let us come to the impact of the Iran conflict on India. And this is where you must show your depth of understanding. So, first we come to, before going to the detailed impact, we must see this particular chain that when Iran war happened, it stakes oil supply at risk. Now, when oil supply is at risk, oil prices will eventually go up. This will lead to increase in transport cost, and this will lead to inflation. And when inflation goes up, interest rate goes up. And when interest rate goes up, growth will decline eventually. So the war of Iran can lead to a dip in growth of India. So this is where a regional issue becomes global, and then global issue becomes domestic issue. Now come to the detailed impacts. So पहला impact है, the first impact is energy impact. Now India imports its 85% of its crude oil. Now, India imports its 85% of crude oil. A large share comes from the Gulf region. So any disruption in oil supply or increase in oil prices directly affects India. Higher oil prices increase its import bill. It widens its current account deficit and can create inflationary pressure. The same thing which we had seen earlier. Oil prices, it led to import bill, and it led to CAD, and CAD led to inflation. Inflation will result into, remember, growth decline. Now second comes the macroeconomic impact, the impact on economy. So when oil prices rise, transport costs increase, and this affect the prices of goods and service across the economy. Inflation rises. So to control the inflation, you may need to increase the interest rate, which slows down investment, and eventually it will lead to the decline in economic growth. Now third comes the agriculture. Fertilizer production depends on natural gas. When energy prices rise, fertilizer prices rise, and this will increase the cost of farming, and it leads to what? Food inflation. So the conflict in Iran indirectly affect food prices in India. Regional to global to domestic. Now comes the fourth one, that is the trade and the logistics. War increase risk in shipping routes. Insurance cost rises, freight cost increases, and this affects both what? Imports and export. To understand this, you must see that after when Strait of Hormuz becomes blocked, now India needs to transfer its shipment through Cape of Good Hope beneath Africa. Now what this will lead to? It increase the time and it increased the cost of oil. Now comes the fifth and the last impact, which is puts on its diaspora and remittances. So 8.9 million Indians will live in Gulf. Mil- Now instability in this region can affect their jobs and reduce remittances. So this has both economic and social implications. India's remittance was $125 billion, and out of this around 50-60 billion dollars will come from this region. So it will put risk on the 50-60 billion dollar of remittances also. Now go beyond impact and think like an policymaker that what should India do? What should India do? So in a short term, India need to ensure its energy security. Now this means diversifying your oil imports, buying from other countries like Russia, US and others. And it also means using your strategic petroleum reserves during the crisis. Now, as you all are aware, that India has 74 days of strategic oil reserves left. And that is why the government of India is at ease. There is no as such panic situations as they were in other countries. Now, in the medium term, India needs to improve its resilience. What India needs to do is it's to improve its resilience. Now, this includes better fiscal management, controlling inflation, and ensuring that economic shocks do not stabilize its growth. And along with that, what it can do is that it im- increase its renewable energy sources and also the diversification of oil uses, like from crude to solar. Now, in the long term, the real solution is reducing your dependency. Atmanirbharta. This is what our Prime Minister is focuses on. For each and every solution, for each and every problem, the ultimate solution lies in what? Atmanirbharta, self reliance. Make in India. Now, this means that investing in renewable energy, solar power, and green hydrogen, because as long as India is dependent on imported oil, it will remain vulnerable to external shocks. Now, look at the global picture. Now, look at the global picture, the global impact. Now, this conflict is not just about Iran and Israel, it involves multiple powers. The United States want stability and influence in the region. China depends heavily on Middle Eastern oil. Russia benefiting from higher oil prices. So this is a multipolar situation where different countries have different interest. Now step back and connects everything. Iran conflict is not a single issue. It is a combination of history, ideology, nuclear politics, geography, and economics. And India is affected because it is deeply connected to the global system. So, what is the result of this global impact? It is the systemic global instability. So, whenever you need to answer about this particular thing, I am giving you a ready-made answer frame. Now, if any question comes related to this particular issue, you must mention the Strait of Hormuz. You must highlight the oil dependency of India. You must highlight in body the causes, that what are the cause behind this particular war or the conflict. Now it comes the history, the nuclear issue and the security dilemma. You must mention the impact which is it puts on the energy, the economy, the agriculture and trade. You must highlight the relations with the India and the responses that India gives. And the fourth and the important point is the global impact that it puts. Now, it leads to a power shift and instability across the globe. And in the conclusion, strategic autonomy and resilience is the solution. So, you must remember, because this is your takeaway, that in IR, distance does not matter, interdependence does. A conflict in Iran can affect inflation in India, growth in India, and policy decisions in India. And that is why this topic is important. If you have understand this completely, you don't just know about Iran, you understand how the world works. Now this is your revision box, which is I'm giving you also, that when you need to study about the Iran, you need to study its history, its ideology, and its insecurity dilemma. You must remember Hormuz as in chalk point. India is 85% oil importing country. Impact on inflation, on CAD and growth. When it comes to policy, so what policy should India follows? Strategic autonomy. And what is the future? The future lies in diversification. So keep learning, keep connecting. Thank you, sir.